In Dark Souls, it seems that worlds are created by painting, or at least new ones are. The base, meaningless world that we have been in since Dark Souls 1 is decided first by the painted world of Ariamis, which is used to hide certain types of creatures and people taking refuge from the harsh world. In the painted world of Ariandel, this concept is furthered. The hideous Corvians that have been seen throughout the game have taken refuge here, among a number of other creatures. Ariandel, who's presumably the painter of the world, as well as one of the daughters representing the pygmies, or mankind, Frida, are defending and guarding or ruling the world. The problem with these painted worlds, we find out, is that they are temporary. In other words, there is no permanent escape from the meaningless existence of Dark Souls into a tranquil world. These paintings eventually begin to rot. These worlds must be generated by sacrifice as well. They are painted with blood. Ariandel can be found flailing himself to generate more blood in order to keep the world perpetuating and fight off the invading rot. This is a temporary solution, and it seems that Frida and others are searching for a permanent one. This brings us to the new painter. She seems to be part human and dragon, possibly a descendant of the prior mentioned Priscilla from Dark Souls 1, who I said represents maybe the connection between the human and divine, like Christ. She's also seemingly pure and innocent, and it either way seems that she originates from the painted worlds. It is not of the corrupt regular world, which is really important. The painter is searching for a sustainable type of blood in order to create a permanent home of peace and happiness for the afflicted peoples and creatures that does not have to be sustained by continuous sacrifice. This brings us finally to Slave Knight Gael. Gael's backstory is somewhat important for the points I'm going to make, and I will link a specific Reddit analysis of his character that is incredibly well done and imperative to my own interpretation. The slave knights represent literal slaves that were in service to the powers that be and were sent into wars and battles to fight and die, essentially less than worthless, the lowest of the low. This particular slave knight was at some point brought into the painted world and encountered the painter, maybe through Frida or Priscilla, and found purpose in serving them. He has been placed on the hunt for this perpetual and sustaining blood to allow the painter to create an eternal paradisal world. All the way back in Dark Souls 1, we are introduced to the concept of the Dark Soul, the game's namesake obviously, but the thing which is obtained by the furtive pygmy which results in humanity. Humanity is considered part of the Dark Soul, and this is what sustains the pygmy or the humans. As the humans lose humanity, they lose Dark Soul and become hollow, falling into purposelessness and meaninglessness, losing life and the meaning of life, if you will. Life is meaningless, making the death and resurrection cycle of the games meaningless. But Gael recognizes the Dark Soul as the source of humanity and life for the furtive pygmy. As such, he goes in pursuit of it as a potential solution. This brings him, and later us, to the Ringed City, which is the place that Gwyn set aside for the Pygmy Lords and the Dark Soul to be guarded and hidden away, probably in an effort to contain its power. Importantly, Gael also seems to recognize the harmful power of the Dark Soul. The Pygmy Lords are the ones who hold it and seem to have been corrupted in some way by its power. When Gael finally finds them, locked away behind the shield of the dreams of Gwyn's daughter, Filianor, they are dried up and meaningless, like the landscape of the true Ringed City that Filianor hides, a heap of ashes. Gael consumes the darkened blood of all the Pygmy Lords, absorbing their fractions of the Dark Soul, and eventually consuming the entirety of the Dark Soul within himself. He seems now monstrous and adversarial, corrupt and only a remnant of his former self. But the Redditor I mentioned earlier and myself see this as intentional. When Gael encounters us, the Ashen One, initially, he sees our warrior power and our potential to slay the gods, as we so do. Consider the seeming possibility that Gael, in service to the painter, recognizes that the power of the Dark Soul is corrupting, but also powerful enough to create a blood that is sustainable to use as ink for the painting. Gael knows that if he consumes it all, he will create this powerful blood of the Dark Soul, but that he will be lost in the process. So he ensures that there is someone more powerful than him set on the right course. He intends for the Ashen One to follow him and finally to slay him, and thereby recover the blood of the Dark from him, and take it back to the painter to result in the creation of a new world. The original poster and myself see Gael as an important sacrificial figure who finally ends the horrible cycle of Dark Souls. I find that both Dark Souls 1 and 3 slowly set up this meaningless, nihilistic, and hopeless world, all until we get to Ariandel and encounter the painter, perhaps the only positive and innocent character in all of the games, joyful and full of potential. We and Gael acquire hope that something could be different, so we set off in pursuit of the creation of a new world. Gael is importantly the lowest of the low, a slave, and a representative of the lowest of humanity. I'm reminded of Christ, who takes on the lowly form of a human to accomplish his sacrificial purpose. He spends his time with those of the lowest status, the slaves and the servants, the lowly, and through the lowly, he saves the world. Jesus sacrifices himself, descends into hell and darkness, allowing himself to be killed, shedding his blood, which cleanses and purifies the world and allows them to obtain eternal life and peace. These themes, I feel, carry over to Gael. This lowly knight sacrifices himself, descending from a lowly but noble position to a disgusting self, a corrupted shell, but with the intention of allowing himself to be killed and shedding his blood, which now imbued with the power of the Dark Soul is able to be used on the painting to create an eternal and pure world, at least, hopefully, what the painter calls a cold, dark, and very gentle place. It seems to me that Gael sacrifices himself for the eternal life of the lowly. The snow and cold I also find interesting. While gentle sounds like a desirable characteristic, cold and dark seem an interesting desirability. But in the sense of Dark Souls, it seems to be in contrast to the falsehood of the established order. Gwyn is the corrupt, oppressive figure toward humanity, and he represents the light. He has been afraid of the Age of the Dark, which in both games humanity is pursuing. Thereby, the dark is desirable. It represents humanity, the Dark Soul, as we've mentioned. In regular symbology, the light represents goodness, but in Dark Souls, it is corruption, and it is turned on its head. Not only light, but also Gwyn's rule is the Age of Fire, or warmth, if you will. The painted world immediately and harshly contrasts this with their snow-covered and cold terrain. In Dark Souls 1, Ariamis is the only landscape which is snow-covered in this way. Fire, light, sun, and warmth do not allow for the presence of snow. That requires the cold and dark. This is shown well in the games. Although both Ariamis and Ariandel have enemies, they are strikingly peaceful. Seeing the Corvians peacefully gather outside of Fried's Ariandel chapel somewhat illustrates this, as does Priscilla not attacking the chosen undead, but allowing them simply to leave. The snow-covered terrain offers itself to a drastically more cozy vibe, if you will. Interestingly, in correlation with the blood imagery related to the painting of the New Worlds, I think that the biblical idea fits well. Isaiah says that though sin paints the world scarlet red, the blood of Christ washes them white as snow. Whiteness, snow, and wool are used in the Bible to demonstrate purity and holiness. For instance, white as wool being the color of God and Christ's hair in the heavenly realm. Dark Souls chooses to use snow and white as its symbols of desirability and purity. The heaven of Dark Souls is white and snowy, and this is the heaven or paradise that the painter is trying to create. A cold, dark, and very gentle place. Gentleness being essentially the extreme opposite of the world in Dark Souls. The From Software games are infamous for being games where almost every single entity that you approach will attack you. There are very few friendly people or NPCs, making them all the more striking when you come across them. Gentleness is so contrary to this, a place of peace, not fighting or warring. To summarize, I think the painter and slave knight Gael represent the true and good ending of the entirety of Dark Souls. The whole of the story showcases the horrible nihilism and the meaninglessness of wars and fighting among the gods, leading only to the subjugation and oppression of humanity. The two endings to Dark Souls 1, we know, both result in the cycle continuing, even if the dark ending allows humanity to prosper for a short time. The cycle proceeds hundreds or thousands of years into the future into the time of Dark Souls 3, where the regular game's ending is also the same, dealing with the First Flame in some way again, relinking, extinguishing, or bringing on the Age of Complete Darkness with no clear outcome. But the DLC gives us a truly potential happy ending. All along the course of these eras, there have been individuals who managed to paint worlds of refuge using lifeblood. Eventually, they refine to the point where they seek to create an eternal refuge, a new world. To do this, they need the powerful blood of the Dark Soul, which has been available all along. So a lowly slave ventures in search of this outcome, knowing he will be lost to history and will never see the outcome of his actions, but in hopes that he can sacrifice himself to grant us his empowered blood, which we return to the great painter who creates a new heaven and new earth, if you will. A pure and gentle place where the violent and meaningless cycle will not carry on. The painter asks for a pigment colored like the dark soul of man, essentially creating a dark place, but a place that is truly intended for man and not for the corrupt gods. A place painted for the noble slave knight, but a place that, like Moses and the Promised Land, he will never see. I'll leave you with the words of the painter herself.
I wonder when Uncle Gael intends his return. I hope the new painting will be to him a gentle home. My thanks, Ashen One. I will assuredly finish the painting of a cold, dark, and very gentle place. One day, it will make someone a goodly home.
If you've been around this long, thank you so much for watching. I had a lot of fun putting this together, and I dare say that my conclusion in this is even better than my conclusion in the Elden Ring analysis. I really hope you enjoyed. If you do, please consider sticking around with the channel. I'm really interested in making more content like this. I have other ideas for analyses in the future, but that is only possible through your support. So if you'd consider subscribing and recommending this video and liking and commenting to let me know what I can do better in the future, I would really appreciate that. And again, I just really appreciate you for being here. So I'm just really passionate about these games and how we can glimpse these really important religious and narrative ideas out of them, and I think that's a really awesome thing. It's not just games, but movies and other types of TV and entertainment too that I want to focus on, books and all those kind of things that I'm hoping to do in the future. So again, if you have been, thank you for watching. Consider sticking around. It's been my pleasure to have you. This has been Credence Questions.